ever looked at something broken and seen beauty instead of waste? In this video, we'll explore how forgotten trash can become the most surprising parts of your garden. From rusty bits to weathered roots, nothing goes to waste. Welcome to Revive Nature, where we turn discarded things into soulful garden art. This episode is all about DIY trash garden ideas you can actually try, no matter where you live. Timestamps are included, so feel free to skip ahead to what inspires you most. And if you have questions, the comments are always open. What matters most is not perfection, but your willingness to try. To some, this is just another YouTube video. But behind it is a real person, a real family, and a quiet dream stitched together by hope. When you like, comment, or subscribe, you do more than support a channel. You help someone believe this work matters. You help a small dream stay alive. Thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing to see me. In the heart of a cottage garden where marigolds dance in the breeze and asters bloom with grace, stands an archway not built, but born. Formed from the intertwined remains of a fallen tree, this rustic root arch feels like a portal, where the boundary between nature and artistry fades. It doesn't shout, it whispers. And in that whisper is a story. Each curve of the gnarled wood tells of decades underground, quietly absorbing the life around it. When raised, cleaned, and lightly stained, the roots transform into something poetic. Not polished, not perfect, but real. Their imperfections become character, the kind that invites a second glance, a curious touch, a smile. Positioned at the garden's threshold, the arch becomes more than decor. It becomes the prologue to the garden's tale. Mums and Japanese anemones climb along its sides, their colors harmonizing with the earthy hues of the roots. In the fall light, shadows spill across the path beneath, creating a moving artwork as the breeze dances through. At twilight, small lanterns cradle themselves between knots and bends, glowing like fireflies caught mid-conversation. Children pass under the arch in wonder. Guests pause to admire. Gardeners find themselves lingering, coffee in hand, tracing the patterns in the wood with quiet admiration. This root arch isn't a gate. It's a gesture. A handmade homage to nature's design, upcycled, reclaimed, and reimagined for beauty. It welcomes all who enter with a story, that from the discarded, from the twisted and forgotten, something breathtaking can grow again. They started as forgotten river stones, dusty, dull, overlooked. Scattered in corners of the yard, half buried under dry soil and fallen leaves. But one rainy afternoon, With a box of leftover paint and a heart full of inspiration, they found a new purpose. Each stone became a canvas. Painted in swirling blues, soft yellows, berry reds, and mossy greens, they came to life like petals on the earth. A delicate mosaic was born, not on the wall, but beneath the flowers, lining the beds like jewelry at the feet of giants. In the front yard, the new edging followed the contours of the garden, curved, playful, full of personality. Neighbors paused. Children pointed. Gardeners asked, "Did you really paint these yourself?" And the answer was always yes, followed by a smile. It wasn't about perfection. Some brushstrokes ran too thick. Some patterns wobbled. But the charm was in the imperfection. Every stone was touched by a hand, guided by imagination. Together, they whispered a story of creativity and care. With fall flowers blooming above, sedum, marigold, and Japanese anemone, the colors danced. In the morning, dew caught on the edges of both leaf and stone, and the whole garden sparkled like a freshly painted dream. These painted stone mosaics didn't just edge the garden. They framed it. They told every visitor that this space was loved, that beauty could be born from simplicity. That art didn't need walls, it only needed the earth and a little time. And maybe, just maybe, someone else would pick up a paintbrush too. In a forgotten corner of the backyard, between an aging pergola and a bed of overgrown asters, two moss-covered boulders waited in silence. Heavy, cold, unmoving. But within their weight lay the perfect form for rest, for grounding, for pause. They weren't placed by machines or carved by artisans. They were rolled, slowly, awkwardly, by hands that saw not just stone, but potential. The kind of potential only a gardener, an artist, or a dreamer could recognize. Once settled into the earth, each boulder was softened, not by sanding or shaping, but by what grew around them. Chrysanthemums leaned close with their golden blooms. Sedum whispered warmth. The roots of nearby plants embraced their bases, anchoring them in a cradle of life. On top of each stone, a cushion found its home, stitched from scrap linen, dyed in the colors of soil and sky. The seating wasn't regal, but it felt sacred. A throne not for a king, but for a thinker. A space to sit with tea and thought. To trace the clouds. To watch bees wobble from flower to flower. This wasn't garden furniture from a store. It was reclaimed serenity. A DIY sculpture of stillness. The boulders told stories of old riverbeds and mountain storms. And now, they offered something back, a place for humans to return to the ground, to rest without rushing, to find beauty in the quiet. As fall painted the air with its crisp brush, the patio corner transformed. Not flashy. not loud, just deeply alive. And anyone who sat there, even just for a moment, felt it. Not all thrones are golden. Some are gray, heavy, and honest. Once tossed aside like driftwood, the tree roots lay tangled and forgotten near the edge of the garden. Twisted by time and softened by soil, they were beautiful in their imperfection, curving like wind trails, branching like lightning bolts. Where others saw debris, she saw design. With care and patience, the roots were cleaned, sanded, and oiled. Some were left in their natural bone-like color, others kissed with soft pigments, moss green, chalky blue, weathered rose. Then, they were mounted not on gallery walls, but on a weathered wooden fence. Each root became a character, one looping like a dancer mid-whirl, another bending like a violin string. They didn't just decorate the fence, they animated it. Suddenly, the static became story. Beneath the fence, a layer of fall flowers, marigold, sedum, aster, burst in warm colors, grounding the artwork with living color. Birds perched nearby. Butterflies paused. Even the breeze seemed to linger longer. At night, tiny solar lanterns glowed behind the roots, casting long, playful shadows. The fence transformed into a theater of silhouettes. Guests would pause at that corner, eyes tracing each root's path, smiles blooming like the flowers below. In a world that moves fast, the fence stood still. It was not merely a boundary, it was a stage, a mural, a quiet rebellion against mass production. And the roots? They danced again, no longer underground, but above the earth, where art and nature met, softly, whimsically, forever in motion. Beneath the falling leaves and whispering winds, something curious rose from the garden bed. Not a plant, not a statue, but a totem. Built not from stone alone, but from yesterday's forgotten trash. A bent spoon, a rusted, now painted, gear, a knob from a broken drawer. Balanced between these relics were smooth river rocks, hand-painted in rustic fall tones, burnt orange, fern green, pale blue. Each stone was like a memory set in color, resting atop the next with gentle defiance of gravity. And as they reached skyward, something magical happened. The backyard changed. These weren't just towers. They were stories. The bottom might speak of weight and grounding. The middle twisted with metal coils, hinting at motion and transformation. The top, perhaps a bottle-cap flower or an antique key, was the exclamation point. Visitors asked, "What does it mean?" And the answer was always the same, whatever you want it to. Children walked circles around them. Gardeners paused mid-rake. Even birds seemed intrigued by the mix of material and form. And at dusk, when the sun dipped low, solar lights hidden inside the junk flickered on, tiny stars in a vertical sky. They became more than decor. They became companions, guardians of the garden. Testaments that what we discard can be transformed, not just into use, but into wonder. The trash and stone totems didn't pretend to be elegant. They wore their history proudly. They stood tall not because they were perfect, but because someone believed they could still be beautiful. There once was a river, not made of water, but of stone. It began with a handful of pebbles, forgotten behind the shed. Then came a brush, leftover paint, and an idea carried by the wind. What if the garden could flow? Each pebble was washed, dried, and transformed. Blues like the sky, greens like forest moss, and oranges like autumn's first leaf. No two were the same, yet together they danced. When laid upon the soil, they traced a path, not just through the garden, but through memory. The river twisted past the chrysanthemums, beneath the anemones, and curled gently near the tiny bench no one used, until now. It brought movement to stillness. Life to an ordinary patch of ground. Neighbors called it art. Children called it magic. Visitors followed it with their eyes, their hands, their stories. And the gardener? She called it her meditation. A trail to peace. A reminder that beauty could be shaped one stone at a time. In the quiet of the afternoon, sunlight played along the curved edges. The painted pebbles shimmered like a secret, guiding bees and butterflies and the occasional curious soul. And when the rains came, the water stayed away, but the colors deepened, richer with every drop, as if the garden knew it had found its flow. No sound, no splash, just stillness with the soul of a river. In the fading light of day, the pergola stood quiet, its beams worn by time, its vines lazily curling toward dusk. But something new clung to its posts, twisted branches of old tree roots, reborn as lantern holders. Each root was chosen for its shape, a curl like a question mark, a gentle hook like a shepherd's crook. Washed and sanded, then stained to match the grain of the pergola's wood, they didn't just hold the lanterns, they elevated them, cradling each light like a hand holding memory. As the sun slipped low, one by one the lanterns blinked alive. A warm amber glow spilled onto the flowers below, marigolds catching gold, sedum burning crimson, and anemones dancing in the breeze. The twisted roots, once buried beneath forest soil, now stretched upward to lift the light. This was no ordinary garden lighting. It was storytelling in shadows. The roots cast shapes on the wooden beams, half animal, half dream. Each twist, each knot, spoke of time, of patience, of forgotten beauty found again. Underneath, in the quiet of the small patio, a cup of tea steamed on a table. The scent of late-blooming asters drifted through the air. And for those lucky enough to sit and notice, the roots whispered their quiet wisdom. Not everything must be straight, not all that's twisted is broken. Sometimes, it is the curves, the imperfections, that carry the light. In a quiet corner of the backyard, beneath the whispering leaves and between blooming marigolds, little mushrooms began to appear, not grown, but placed. Not from soil, but from stone. Each one was crafted by hand. A smooth river rock, flattened just so, became the cap. Beneath it, a stouter stone stood proudly as the stem. With a flick of a brush and a palette of joyful colors, red with white spots, lavender with golden swirls, even mossy green, they transformed into the stuff of fairy tales. Children gasped when they saw them. Adults smiled, remembering stories once told at bedtime. These weren't just decorations. They were invitations. Tiny, whimsical reminders that magic still lingers at garden level. Placed among chrysanthemums and sedum autumn joy, they brought contrast and charm. On misty mornings, dew collected on their caps, giving them a lifelike shimmer. Bees hovered curiously, and butterflies rested nearby, as if acknowledging their quiet magic. There was something about their shape, organic yet imperfect, that made them feel alive. Not artificial, not cartoonish, but perfectly in tune with nature's eccentricity. Some say they mark the entrance to a secret world, a gate to something unseen. Others simply see them as cheerful accents, lighting up garden beds without electricity, blooming with color long after petals have faded. Whatever you choose to believe, the truth remains. These painted stone mushrooms hold more than just paint and polish. They hold wonder. They turn the ordinary into the extraordinary. They ask nothing, yet give everything, a smile, a memory, a pause to dream. In the language of gardens, they say, "Come closer. Look lower. There's magic here." They didn't come from a shop. They weren't molded from plastic or cast in resin. They were built by hand, one pebble, one root at a time. It started with a frog. A round stone became its belly. A split root curved into legs. Two painted pebbles, perfectly mismatched, blinked up as eyes. It was rough, uneven, and full of charm. Soon, it was joined by others, a turtle with a bark shell, a rabbit curled in the flower bed, even a tiny songbird perched on a stone. Placed among blooming asters and marigolds, these animal statues didn't just decorate the garden, they animated it. Children crouched down, whispering names and stories. Gardeners gave them personalities. "That one guards the mums," they'd say. "This one loves the rain." Each statue was different because each root was unique. A twist became a tail. A crack became a wing. And the more imperfect, the more alive they felt. They belonged, not as foreign objects, but as if they had always been there, creatures born from the earth itself. In autumn, when the colors deepened and the light grew golden, the animals blended into their surroundings like hidden gems. Visitors paused. Smiles appeared. Conversation slowed. They weren't loud or grand. They didn't need to be. They spoke with stillness. They taught that imagination can grow anywhere, especially in the corners of a garden. Made from trash, from what others might discard, these rock and root animals told a quiet story. That beauty can be born of play, that art can emerge from nature, and that even a stone can come to life if seen with the right eyes. In the tiniest patch of garden, where light filters through leaves and the breeze speaks in whispers, something magical grows, not just flowers, but stories. At the heart of it stands a planter unlike any other. Not ceramic, not metal, but a root, twisted, gnarled, and hollowed by time. It was once discarded, a piece of forest debris. But in the hands of a dreamer, it became a home. With gentle carving and soft staining, the root was transformed into a fairy cottage. Tiny windows appeared, a crooked door, even a ladder made from twigs. Inside its curved embrace, blooms of chrysanthemums and Japanese anemones spilled outward, as if planted by the fairies themselves. Placed in a tiny garden, it drew attention not by grandeur, but by wonder. Neighbors leaned in closer. Children tiptoed around it. "Do they live here?" someone asked. The answer? Only if you believe. Each root planter became a storybook in 3D. No two were alike. Some curled like sleeping dragons. Others stretched upward like reaching fingers. And within them all bloomed not just flowers, but imagination. Fairy lights wove between the roots at night, casting soft glows on mossy ground. Painted stones marked tiny paths. Fallen leaves became welcome mats. Even the bees seemed gentler here, hovering like guests at a secret inn. This wasn't just gardening. It was storytelling through soil and bark. A reminder that the smallest spaces can hold the biggest magic. That nature, even when twisted and worn, holds endless beauty when seen through the eyes of whimsy. In a world that rushes, the fairy root planter asked us to pause, to imagine, to smile, and to plant a little wonder of our own.